The modern family. Let us bridge the gap between generations. Let us shape up the modern family. The modern family. Join the discussion and give us your feedback. Live with Hatem Al Abdessalam. The modern family. I always thought about, and I just wanted to be there with you, the place that no eye has ever seen.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful. All praise be to Allah, the Lord of the heavens and the earth, and peace and blessings be upon our beloved Messenger Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Dear listeners, I'm your host Hatem Al Abdessalam. I salute you all with the salutation of the people of paradise. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you for joining us again on your program, The Modern Family. We have taken a break for a month and now we're back with the program. And today we have a very honorable and distinguished guest, Mr. Ahmed bin Mubarak Al-Mata'ani, who is a very good friend of mine. He is the head of the General Education Department at one of the private colleges, and I'm very honored to have him here tonight. And I also had a challenge with him that I couldn't say that he's single live on air. So Ahmed, Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you for hosting me here in your program.
Ahmed, thank you for accepting the invitation at a very short notice, and I really appreciate for you coming and joining us today. Today we have a very open topic, and I think we'll just chat and discuss, and would love our listeners as well to call us and tell us what they think. Today we're going to discuss about raising children in the city and in the countryside. As both me and Ahmed, we've been raised in different backgrounds, and it's good to share the knowledge and to see what are the cons and pros of being raised either in the city or in the countryside.
But you can call me the city boy now.
You're the city boy, yeah. Okay, Ahmed, there is lots of directions that we can look at this topic, and maybe we can start geographically. What is the effect of being raised in the countryside?
Well, when we talk about the countryside, because, I grew up in a countryside area, we talk about the geographical, features of a countryside. And if we want to talk about this, we'll definitely have to talk about the features of a countryside in terms of geography. So when you talk about countryside, usually you talk about the kind of natural geographical features, like, for example, the location of the city and the location of the countryside. Okay, in terms of nature, in the countryside you are always in touch with nature. You're always surrounded with a lot of natural surroundings, like mountains, like valleys and so on, compared to the countries, compared to the city.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a lot of buildings here. Okay, while if you go to the countryside, you will be surprised to see and enjoy the beauty of nature, in terms of, as you said, valleys, wadis, if you want to call them, also mountains. So it gives you the chance to contemplate and explore more about what nature can teach you.
Ahmed, do you believe that you've been attached to nature because you've been raised in the countryside? Did it give you an advantage, a feeling that the kids who are raised in the city don't have, like appreciating the nature?
Yeah, now we have a lot of these calls for being green. Okay,
yeah.
I can see it more because I used to see it like 24 hours a day, and 24/7. And so when people talk about this, it's not a new concept for me. Maybe the presentation or the way we talk about it nowadays is different, okay?
Yeah.
But I always, like, whether I like it or not, people talk about nature, people, talk about the idea of harvest and so on, the idea of taking care of the farms, okay, taking care of the villages and so on, has given me the chance to realize the importance of nature. Okay, some people might argue and say it's only because you have to deal with it. Okay, it doesn't mean that you can appreciate this kind of appreciation for the nature. But for me, talking about my personal experience, I just feel that I'm always connected to nature because of the surrounding that I had when I was a child.
I have a few friends who were raised in the countryside, and some of them really don't like nature. So I think it's a matter of choice.
Exactly.
It's a matter of choice. It's not something that you have to do. It's just because you're surrounded with this beautiful landscape, and you see the family members taking care of the farms and the valleys, and they have a lot of time spending with the trees and in nature, and it becomes embedded inside you.
Exactly. This is coming to the idea of the role of families in talking about the importance of nature in your life. If you don't have a family supporting the idea of taking care of nature, then definitely you will not grow up realizing the importance of such a concept. And this is why I said at the beginning, it depends whether you're forced to understand the concept of nature or not, or, people around you talk about it and they try to discuss, different issues related to that one. So, of course, the discussion that we used to have are not scientifically oriented, but sometimes just talking to grandparents, talking about the value of having agricultural areas and so on and taking care of them, from a religious point of view, would make you think that I need to take care of nature. So I think the role of the family is very important in making you realize the importance of such a thing.
Ahmed, mentioning the agriculture, I think people are taking even a further step, and they have really attached to their palm trees. And this I noticed in many of my friends, that they really respect the trees, and they dedicate their lives for these trees and for their farms. I have one of my friends who told me that his dad had a farm, and it had a well. So they used to use the water from the well for the farm, and then suddenly there was no more water in the farm. So the father was really depressed because he's going to lose his farm. And what happened is he took all his life saving and dedicated to put an irrigation system for the farm, which for the people who are living in the city would be something like, why would you do such a thing? Instead, you can buy a house, for example, or buy a fancy car, or buy a building. Why do you care about a farm? But to them, no, it's an attachment. It's an attachment. It's like marriage. You're married to the farm.
Exactly.
And it means a lot. It means a lot.
Even those who are moving to the city, and they have this kind of a strong relationship with nature, they tend to bring this kind of concept into their houses here in the city. If you go around, you find certain houses with palm this kind of a flavor, in their houses. While those people are not used to the idea of nature, in their life, then they will not care. It's all about building. So I think, it depends on the way we are brought up, and how we value nature in our life.
I remember when I was younger, and we moved to this neighborhood in the 80s. One of our neighbors was from the countryside, and they decided to move to Muscat. And at that age, we never understood the concept of having cattle in the city. So, like, we had a pet cat, or a parrot, or a turtle, or something like that. And they had like 50 goats and chickens, and so we never, understood this concept, and we never, we thought this is something which is unacceptable. But to our neighbor, this was very important.
Very important.
It was the only thing attaching them to the countryside.
And if you allow me, we need maybe to talk about a very important thing here.
Ahmed, before you continue, and then you'll tell us about your pet camel.
Okay. Like the way we view people with their own concepts and beliefs and traditions when it comes to, let's talk about nature, for example. Sometimes, a lot of people because they haven't practiced or they haven't seen such a thing, they will tend to criticize people with this kind of beliefs and ideas and so on. So we need to understand that, if we are different, it doesn't mean that there is something wrong.
Yeah.
Okay, we need to accommodate different ideas, different, ways of thinking. Okay, so unfortunately we notice, or sometimes we see a lot of people who are trying to push those people who have this kind of ideas because they are not their cups of teas, okay, and they tend to think that these are not civilized, people, and they need to go back to the countryside. They cannot, bring this kind of lifestyle to the city, okay? But there is a very important concept here we want to emphasize, that we need to take care of nature, okay? Location will not be the case or the main determiner or determining factor to decide whether we should this nature in our life or not.
And having the cities is a new phenomenon.
Yes.
We didn't have cities before. And we all, I'm sure, part of my family or maybe our ancestors, they had cattle. They lived in the countryside.
Yeah.
And as time passed by, we moved to the city. So understanding the difference and understanding where we are coming from makes a big difference. And here it comes the role of the parents.
Exactly.
And the parents can educate their children and tell them that do not criticize others because of the difference.
Yes.
And explain to them why they're acting in this way.
Exactly.
Instead of, having that dialogue that us and them. It's all us, but there's a difference, and we have to explain to our children. Otherwise, our children will be raised with this mentality that we're better than them.
Exactly.
We are civilized, they are not civilized, and this is very, very wrong.
Unfortunately, yes. We have a problem in the idea of accepting, people from different backgrounds, different cultures, and so on. We need to be very open-minded to different cultures. In fact, it's a questions of power, to tell you the truth, okay? Now, with media that we have, that really trying to impose certain ideas into our heads and into our ideas and beliefs, okay, we need also to have another type of media that will get us together to understand that, having differences is not an issue.
Yeah.
Having differences is a chance for us to learn more, okay, from other people, so that we will have more sources of knowledge instead of sticking to specific areas. So it's something that we need to talk about. We need to educate our people about, okay, especially when we talk about differences.
Let us go to the other side, Ahmed. For the people who come from the countryside, and now they're moving to the city, coping with the life in the city might be difficult.
Yes.
Might be a challenge to them. Like the thing that we discussed about raising cattle in the city. What approach can they take to try and accommodate? Because again, you are trying to fit yourself into an environment where everybody around you is different, and you don't want to let go of the values of your village or your tradition, and at the same time you want to be there in the city.
Exactly.
So is there a middle line? Is there a place where you can compromise?
Actually, when we talk about this, we have to look at two parties, okay? The person who's coming from the countryside and the people who are surrounding him in the city.
Yeah.
So every person has a role to play.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we'll not get into the middle line that you were talking about. So talking about the first, party or the first, part of the element or the first element of this process, the person who's coming from the countryside. Okay, we're talking about those people who are coming from the countryside. They need to learn the art of adapting. Okay, because we need to make sure here, we need to emphasize the idea that people who are coming from the countryside,
yes,
they are not wrong, and people who are living in the city are not wrong too.
Yeah.
Okay, it's only a different lifestyle. Okay, so for the person who's coming from the countryside, needs to learn the art, what I call the art of Adapting. Okay? You need to adapt and adopt at the same time. Because, there are a lot of things which could be so different to the way of life that you're used to. So you need to learn how to learn from the people who are around you. So you need to adapt and adopt. Because, as I said before, it doesn't mean that everything in a particular culture is wrong, and it's not, and the same thing, applied, for a different culture. So now we have two different cultures. We have the culture of what? The countryside.
Yeah.
And we have the culture of what? The city.
The city.
So there are a lot of beautiful things in both cultures. And there are a lot of things that we should also be careful about when we talk about what? Both cultures.
I have to wear the neutral hat here, Ahmed, and I would admit and say that we are always asking the people from the countryside to cope with the life in the city, and we enforce this on them, and we think that it is easy. But actually, it's difficult for the people who are from the city to go to the countryside and adapt to the life in the countryside. So, and we assume that it's going to be easy for the people who are coming from the countryside to adapt to the life in the city.
This is why I said at the beginning, we have to look at the two parties, okay? We're talking about the first party, in this case, which is the people who are coming from the countryside.
Yeah.
They need to have the ability to adapt and adopt.
Yeah.
Now, when we talk about, the other side of the story, we're talking about the people who are living in the city. They also have to learn how to accommodate people, with different ideas.
Yeah.
Because now the thing is, whether we like it or not, I'm moving from the countryside, to the city. So I have to do a lot of adoption, and a lot of adaptation when I go to the city, because I'm moving now, okay. Now the people who are living in the city, they have to learn how to accommodate, how to accept, different cultures and different ideas.
And give them time.
And give them time, exactly. So. And then the same thing, for those people who would have the chance to go to the countryside, they are from the city, but they want to go to the countryside. They also have to learn the art of adopting and adapting. Okay?
What worries me, Ahmed, is not the parents. What worries me is the kids. Because for the parents, it will take them a bit of time and they can adapt. Okay? But for the children, you're getting them into a totally different environment, which is like a cultural shock to them. And this can affect them psychologically. For example, if they go to school and they behave in a different way, or even talk in a different way, they are being criticized by their colleagues at work. Sorry, not at work, at school. Okay? And this is like it's happening. They label them with names, and they don't play with them, and the children from the countryside, they just feel that they are left out, and then they grow up having this mentality that we're not wanted here.
Yes. So you're talking about a very important issue here. Yes, of course, and like when we talk, I think, Hatem, I agree with you when it comes to the impact that the children might get because of the interaction that they might have at school or maybe neighbors and so on. But at the same time, there's a very important role that the family has to play.
Yeah.
We need to prepare our kids from the beginning to be able to cope with any kind of situations. First of all, we need to emphasize the idea of identity. Okay? They need to understand that, this is part of my identity and I have to be proud of that.
Yeah.
Okay? This is number one. Number two, we need also to train our children. First of all, we need to understand that children are very smart.
Yeah.
Okay? We should not underestimate them. So we need to make sure that we dialogue. We talk to them from time to time. And we need to discuss all these issues. We tell them, for example, you might have this kind of situation when you go to school, okay? And then you need to also to explain to the people that, I might look different, or I might, have different beliefs and different traditions and so on. But it doesn't make me less important than you are. So they need to develop this kind of persona, if you want to call it, or charisma from the beginning. Okay, we should not just, like give up from the beginning, and we said, let them, learn whatever from the school.
And I think make it gradually.
Yes.
Making it gradually, like, for example, if you're in the countryside, once a month take them to the city, let them have the feel of the city, get them to have new friends from the city.
Okay.
Once you decide to make the move permanently to the city, then at least they have an idea what to expect. You don't want them to get up in the morning and find themselves in mass.
Yeah,
exactly. Where are we, and what are we doing here, and who are the people around us, and why do they talk funny?
Yes, I think like back to the idea of really taking care of the children from the beginning. I believe like our children are really smart, okay, and they can pick up a lot of things, so we should not underestimate them. Okay, we need to talk about these issues, because if they don't get answers at home, they will try to find them somewhere else.
Yes.
And that is very dangerous. Okay, they need to understand that this is part of their identity. Okay, they should be proud of that. Okay, especially if it doesn't clash with the idea of becoming a better person. Okay, because we have a lot of traditions and values and so on, which could be sort of not helping us to advance or to become, better people. Okay, so we need to also make sure that these people are exposed to this kind of ideas and so on from time to time. So the idea of talking to the children should be always the case, one of the solutions to tackle these kind of problems in the future.
I think it's not fair that me and you only were discussing this topic, Ahmed, and I think our listeners can join us in the discussion and tell us what they think. They can call us on 24602058. That's 24602058. We'll just take a short break for the call of prayers, and we'll be right back.
You're listening to Radio Sultanate of Oman on your favorite radio station, 90.4 FM.
Our listeners, now it's time for a call to prayers. Adhan al-Isha, according to local timing of Muscat and its suburbs. Those who reside outside Muscat Governorate have to notice the difference in timing. Radio Sultanate of Oman.
The Modern Family.
Welcome back, Ahmed.
Welcome.
Okay, Ahmed, we had a very interesting discussion in the first part of the show, and we would like also our listeners to contribute and call us. Thank you for Abdullah Rashdi who called during the break, and you can call us on 24602058. Let us continue, Ahmed.
Yeah, if you allow me to talk a little bit about, the environmental, factor that we just covered.
Sure.
Like when it comes to the countryside, life tends to be much more calmer than, the city.
In what sense?
Like in terms of noise. Okay, like countryside tends to be quieter than the lifestyle here in the city.
Yeah.
Which sometimes helps you to reflect and think, and contemplate more than, living here in the city. Because, like we've got sound noise here, we've got, like air pollution, name it, like a lot of things, could contribute to the idea of thinking, properly. Okay. So I think, like living in the countryside might help us, to think, more, clearly. But unfortunately, we don't utilize it, properly in the countryside. I wish we could have, more programs, okay, that help us, to utilize this kind of environment, more effectively.
Just to add to what you have said, even in the city, in the past, when people moved to new areas, it used to be so quiet. But the thing is, the trend now is that when you decide to start a home, okay, in the city, you look at the most popular area, and there you're going to build or buy a house.
Yeah.
While you should at least go and look for a new area where it is quiet and more comfortable, and it's a better place to raise your children. But we're doing the opposite.
Exactly.
Because we tend to forget the importance of quietness.
Yes.
Of being in an environment where there is no loud noises like from cars or just aeroplanes passing by.
Yeah.
Like the people who are living here in next to the airport,
yeah.
they are really disturbed
Exactly.
from the noise of the aeroplanes passing by every 10 minutes, and they never thought of it.
Yes.
They thought it's a posh area,
Yeah.
and it's the best
Exactly.
investment that I can make.
Exactly.
So I think these things we should take into consideration, and especially that we as parents, most of the day we're at work, but who are suffering our
yeah,
children.
Exactly.
So we have to think really hard when it comes to deciding where your next home needs to be.
And actually, this is back to the idea of, making the right decision, okay? We tend to follow, what the trend is, okay? And as a result, we make sometimes, wrong decisions. Only because this is what we should do, okay, because it's the new trend.
The other thing that we wanted to discuss, Ahmed, is about the social element in the countryside and in the city.
Yes.
I think in the city we used to have a social element in the past, and maybe some families are still maintaining that, but it's not as much as it is in the countryside.
Correct.
Maybe you can share some of your experience from this.
Yeah, like let's start about the structure, for example. Families tend to be more of extended type compared to the countryside.
Yeah.
And not only that, we're not talking about the family members. We're talking even about the neighbors. The neighbors tend to be like family members because of the strong relationship between the people in the countryside. Okay. For example, also we talk about tribes. The ideas of getting connected to
the tribe.
The tribe, the members of the tribe is also emphasized more in the countryside.
And you will notice that in the countryside, the members of the same tribe living in the same area.
Exactly.
While in the city, you can live anywhere, and there is no allocated locations for a particular tribe.
Yeah.
So it's a mixture.
Yeah.
In one way, it is better to mingle with the different people from different tribes.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the advantage in the countryside is that you get to know the people in your tribe, and you get the support of the tribe.
Yeah.
And it's always been for Arabs and Muslims, it's always been a tribal society.
Yes.
And the loyalty goes to the tribe.
Yeah. You know, like talking about, tribes and so on, and the social element, that you were trying to explain, a few minutes ago. There is also the problem of sometimes, this interference, component. We don't want to just say that, everything is perfect in the countryside.
Yeah.
Okay. It's good to be connected to people around you. It's good to be known and connected, in touch with people that you know and people that you relate to.
Yeah.
Okay. But, we have the other element, which is what people feel that, they are obliged to to know more about your personal life. So they tend to interfere into your life. And sometimes they make your decisions. Okay.
So it becomes a big extended family.
Exactly. And they think it's a kind of obligation for them to help you making decisions and knowing everything about your life. You need to have this kind of space of a privacy.
And you worry about the reputation, because if you do anything which is against the tribe,
the norms
of the tribe, then
you're in trouble.
You are affecting the whole tribe.
Exactly. So it's becoming an issue. Okay. It's a good thing in one sense, but at the same time, it could bring a lot of issues. Okay, when we think about it. But I like the component of supporting each other. Especially when a sad time, or a happy time, which you don't see here in our city life. You were talking about the idea of naming, villages sometimes. And after a certain tribe. For example, the village of Matani people, or the village of, for example, like Al Abd Salam. So, just because people are like very connected and they have, a very big community. Okay. While here in the city, you don't see that. And, like I lived in a place where I hardly, had the chance to talk to people around me. We were just, living next to each other, and still we will not be able to communicate. Okay, talking about, their lifestyle and things, happening in their lives. Okay, so it's also a problem.
Yes.
Okay, and I think, we have to be in the middle, not, trying to invade, people's privacy, like what's happening in the countryside in some cases. And also we should not ignore the idea of being, in touch to other people that friends, family members, and so on.
I think the key word here is to strike a balance.
Exactly.
And we should take the good side from living in the countryside.
Yes.
And also take some of the advantages of living in the city. And we should train our children to have this striking balance. It's very, very important, and it molds their personality.
Exactly.
And it makes them better people.
Yes.
And when they grow up, they can adapt to any environment.
Yeah.
Whether you take them to the countryside or you
take them to the
city, then it doesn't make a difference to them.
Yeah. You see, Hatem, you keep emphasizing the idea of what training or educating our children, okay, from the beginning. Okay, we should not underestimate them. I want to emphasize this more and more, okay? That we should not underestimate our children, because they have potentials, okay? They are very smart, okay? And they can be brought up from the beginning, okay, on how to deal with different lifestyles, okay, without any problems. If we just emphasize it from the beginning that, there are differences and we need to cope with these differences.
Okay. What about morally and ethically and educating our children and being the guardian or the counselor for the child? I think in the countryside, this is the job of the whole community. It's not the job of the parents.
Exactly.
While back in the city, only the parents are responsible. It used to be the family. The extended family is responsible to raise the children.
Yeah.
But nowadays, no. It's like I'm responsible of my own kids, and I don't allow anybody else to interfere with the business with my children. Is it still the same in the countryside, Ahmed, or it has changed?
Just taken, from what we have just said, unfortunately we have families who think that, they are not responsible anymore for taking care of their children, to tell you the truth. They think that the school is in charge.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is in the city or
In the city.
In the city.
And it could happen also in the countryside.
Okay.
Now back to the idea, I remember when I was a kid, okay, not only my family members used to sort of guide me when I do something wrong.
Yeah.
Okay. My neighbors, okay, for example, an old member of the neighborhood would come and talk to me, would tell me, you're like my son, and it will be like it will be the practice actually for every single person in that village to take care of everyone in that particular area.
To start off, they know everybody.
Exactly. Okay, because we are fully connected. Okay, we have this strong bond, between among people. So they feel that there's an obligation, okay, for every single person in that particular area to take care of every single child. Okay,
Yes.
even if he is not your child. Okay, of course nowadays, it's not like in the
used to be.
past. Okay, but we still have that component of taking care of the whole village or the whole neighborhood and so on.
Ahmed, I just wanted to add, when it comes to the city, why this is not applicable, why it cannot be practiced. You see, the people living in the countryside, they all, for example, come from the same tribe, and they all have the same values. So whatever the child is taught around the environment of the village, it will be unified, something
Exactly.
the same. But when you come to the city, you have people from different backgrounds, from different cities, who come and live in one place, and with different educational background. And every one of them wants to raise their children in a particular way. That's why they become very defensive when you try and approach them and talk to them about how to raise their children. Because they feel that you are coming from a different background and you have no right to preach or to tell me how to raise my children.
I agree. But, let's talk about, what we should maybe call them universal values.
Yeah.
They're a set of universal values.
Yeah.
That I don't think, I think everybody would agree
Yeah.
that, they will be in every single culture.
Yeah.
Okay? At least, we need to talk about these kind of things. I don't think that, anybody would be angry, okay, if you find if he or she finds somebody talking or guiding, his or her child, not to do something wrong.
Yeah.
I don't think it's an issue. Maybe we have different values and different belief and so on, but I don't think that people will disagree when it comes to universal values. That's number one. Number two, the idea of a freedom now, this is another problem now we started to believe, what are the boundaries of a freedom? Okay. Now sometimes, maybe when you interfere, when you try to give a piece of advice to somebody around you, you're not talking only about, your limitations, okay, or you're part of a freedom. You're talking about, who is going to be affected, from that kind of action. Because if I don't talk, maybe my child will witness that kind of action.
Yeah.
Okay? And then he will start to think, it's okay. It's only maybe in my house. Okay? And maybe then he'll start to question a lot of things. It's like, why it is okay in that house, it's not okay in this house, and so on.
Yeah.
So at least, maybe we can talk about, who could be the victim at the end of the day.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that, I'm invading your freedom or your privacy, but at the same time, if I keep quiet and calm, I'm going to affect, another person. I'm going to affect myself sometime. Because if I keep quiet when I see something wrong happening, then, people will think it's okay. And then my children, or maybe, somebody's children might think it's okay because, these people don't talk about it, okay?
Yeah.
And then they'll start, to adopt, this kind of behavior. So it's not only about, keeping my children away from other people. No, it's about, how the community can get affected negatively. Yeah. We have to think as a community, not as individuals.
The element of trust is also important.
Yeah.
When you trust others
Yeah.
with your children, and in a big city, the element of trust is not there because you don't know the person to start off with, so you can't hand them over the duty of
Yeah,
raising
it's true.
your
Yeah,
children.
I agree. I agree. Yeah.
Okay, Ahmed, the next part is education. The variety of choices in accessing education. Tell me a little bit more about the education system when you were younger in the countryside.
Well, it was very basic actually, like a very typical, traditional school. Okay. Let's talk about, Quranic school, for example. Okay. You just go, like to a place, you just go and learn about, recitation, memorization. You learn also about, how to follow rules. Okay. There are not the chances for you to critically think about a lot of issues.
Yeah.
You're not encouraged to criticize, to solve problems. Okay. Because, we have sets of rules that we just feel that, we need to be very protective, about them. And we want to emphasize them all the time. Okay. So in terms of ideas, okay, and approaches of teaching, we tend to use what a lot of traditional ways of teaching and so on and educating people.
Yeah.
And this is the same thing, when it comes to schools, okay, because of lack of services, okay, maybe you will not find a lot of technological tools, to be acquainted with what's happening around the world and so on.
Yeah.
So your access to the updated and the current information is very limited when it comes to countryside. Okay. Some people might argue, that saying that maybe with the internet now, we can, have more access, but still we are very limited when it comes to that. And, but this has also a lot of advantages, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
Okay. Like at a certain stage, you want to emphasize certain values, okay, when it comes to education. Certain, principles, okay. So when you try to put, all these rules as the only rules, okay, accessible to your children or people around you, then you ensure one thing, which is what? Strong foundation.
Yeah.
Now, we should not talk about, the idea whether these principles are right or wrong. This is another story.
Yeah.
But, if you think about it from a perspective of making sure that the values are really appreciated and encouraged, okay, then these kind of societies will help you develop such a thing.
What about order and values and discipline in schools? Was there order and discipline in school? And I'll tell you why I'm asking this.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. What do you mean by discipline? Okay, I might, not do an action which considered to be wrong out of fear.
Yeah.
It's not because, I'm fully convinced that this is, wrong. Okay. So we, like maybe, yes, I agree with you. Like we seem to be more disciplined if we live in the countryside more than the city. Okay. But
maybe the fear element.
The fear element is, we need to discuss it. But it's not always the case. Sometimes, it's only, we really are disciplined because of the environment. But I think, we need to study, first of all, why we are more disciplined in the countryside than in the city.
The thing is, why I asked you this is that because I believe that I went to the worst school in Oman. And why do I say that there was no discipline whatsoever? And
you mean in the city?
In the city.
Okay.
In the city. The thing is that most of I would say majority of the children who come to the public schools in the city, both parents are working. So when both parents are working full day, plus you don't have this tribal connection, village connection, the mentor from the family, then you find out that kids turn up to be less disciplined and they don't have a particular system or order. We don't like the Quranic schools that you spoke about. They were very few in the city compared to the countryside. So I think lacking that very important part of the beginning of the cycle of growing up tend to create problems later on.
Yeah.
And the chaos was unbearable. I can't even explain or imagine how I graduated from that school alive.
Okay. I'm telling you, nowadays you can see such a school in the countryside. Okay, you mentioned a very important, thing when you were talking about the idea of parents' involvement in the process of taking care of the kids.
Yeah.
Okay, and as you said at the beginning, in countrysides, okay, especially in the past, parents were fully involved in the process of taking care of the children. Okay, while in the city it's not, because as you said, parents are working and so on. But nowadays the case is, or the disease, if you want to call it, is moving towards another countryside, because a lot of parents do not understand or don't realize the importance of taking care of their kids.
Yeah.
Whether they are living in the countryside or they're living in the city. Okay? And I know that, there are a lot of parents who are taking care of their children here in the country. And
in the
kids,
countryside or in the city?
No, in the city.
In the city.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And they are, with very strong values and so on. Why? Because they pay attention to them. They specify a lot of time, to talk to them, to discuss. Okay? There's always a dialogue, where they talk about it. Of course, there's this kind of uncontrollable, sources of information from here and there. Okay? Sometimes, because of technology and so on. But I think if we have a lot of dialogues and we realize the role of parents in taking care of their kids, okay, we should not have an issue. Okay, we need to emphasize the role of parents, whether they're living in the countryside or they're living in the city. They need to be involved in the process. Okay,
Ahmed, when it comes to tradition and culture, I salute many parents who live in the city but make sure to take their children on every weekend to the countryside and connect them back to their roots and to their values. And you have children with mixed values, the values of the city, while also they are attached to the values of the countryside, the village, the tribe, and you have a very good mixture. But majority of families who are living in the city, they tend to forget about the countryside and they don't take their children.
Yeah.
And many of them lose identity.
Yes.
And you come up with children who don't wish to speak the language, the Arabic language.
Yeah.
They don't want to dress traditionally. They don't want to think traditionally. They hate tradition and they have no idea what is tradition.
Yeah.
And this is a catastrophe. For a civilization to perish, you just have to destroy the culture and the tradition, and they're gone.
Yes.
And this is something that we are facing. And this is a disadvantage of living in the city.
Yeah.
So what can we advise the parents when it comes to this element?
Yeah. Here we need to talk first of all about, the idea of development, first of all. Are we talking about, physical development? Are we talking about, cognitive, development, okay? Because people tend to compare it with something they can touch. They forget about the idea of thinking. They think about the idea of, feeling, the idea of believing, okay? And, they misunderstand the concept of development, the freedom, for example, okay? For example, being open-minded to different cultures. It's good to be open-minded to different cultures. You need to understand, where people are coming from. But at the same time, I also need to teach people, okay, where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
Okay? Why do I have to give up, my culture, okay, to make you happy? Okay? There are a lot of beautiful things of my culture, okay, that people need to learn about my culture.
And these things make who I am today.
Yeah. And this is why I'm special. This is why you're special, because you need to be proud of who you are, especially when you talk about values, when you talk about traditions that, will make us, advance and become better people. Okay? So we need to really make sure that we don't forget about our culture. We need to also educate people about the beautiful things about our cultures. Yeah. And the idea of being open-minded does not mean that we need to forget about, our culture.
Sometimes I don't blame these kids who who tend to let go of their culture because they don't know their culture. They have not been taken through the process of what is a culture.
Yeah.
And what are the beautiful things about our culture.
Yeah.
They have been raised in the city and they have not been exposed to the countryside.
Yeah.
Even when you take them once or twice to the countryside, they're panicking because they don't know how to react.
Yes.
They don't know how to act in front of people
Yeah.
who are living in the countryside.
Yeah.
And this is not the mistake of the children, it's the mistake of the parent.
Exactly. And you know, like, we could have a lot of things happening, you know, in the city, teaching us about, you know, about our traditions, about our culture, in a very fascinating, you know, attractive,
Modern way.
fashion. Okay, and instead of, you know, degrading our culture and thinking that, you know, the culture is always something, you know, negative, or there's a problem with our culture. You know, like, for example, we should have, you know, more modern museums, okay, talking about the culture. Okay, like what's happening in the West. They tend to emphasize, you know, the role of history, the role of culture, and so on. Okay, by using technology, by using, you know, media, like what we are doing now.
Yeah.
We need to make, you know, our children who are living in the city more exposed to the beauty of our culture. Okay, and because, as you said, you know, a lot of them, you know, maybe have moved, or maybe their parents, you know, moved from the countryside and to the city without realizing, you know,
And Ahmed,
that they have to teach them.
even for adults like us, we need to know as well. We need to find out about our culture.
Yes.
Today, you know, I was embarrassed that one of the visitors who visited Oman and asked me, who invented halwa? And who is the person who designed the khanjar?
Wow.
I don't have an answer, and I don't know where to look,
Yeah.
and I just don't know where to start. And it's a shame because
Yes.
it's part of our culture. It's a sign. It's a, you know, we see it every single day, but we don't know what's the roots
Yes.
of this particular thing.
I think, you know, it's really sad, you know, because we have this fear of the old or of the culture. Okay, we just feel that, you know, whenever you're connected to the culture, people will think that you are not civilized.
Yeah.
And we need to work hard, you know, all the institutions, well, name it, you know, colleges, universities, Ministry of Education, Ministry of Heritage, name all these institutions who could really support, okay, people to get educated about, okay, the importance of culture and understanding the differences, okay, and how we can cope with all these differences. And we appreciate the differences because we need to live, you know, in a world that has different values, different, you know, cultures, different beliefs and traditions and so on.
We'd like to remind our listeners that we have another few minutes to go. You can always call us and share your thoughts on the show on 24602058. That's 24602058. Ahmed, we have a few minutes to go, but what can we advise the parents when it comes to raise their children, especially when it comes to moving to the college or to the workforce? When you're raised in the countryside and then suddenly you graduate from high school and you find yourself that you need to go to a university or college which is in the city,
Yeah.
and you need to cope,
Yes.
and then you need to find a career in the city, so it becomes like a cultural shock and you don't know where to start. So what can they do for their children? I mean, for example, you're living in the city now, and you're working here, and most probably you'll be settling here. So what happened when you moved from the countryside?
Well, maybe, you know, for me it's a different story, but let's talk about what should be done actually, so that we can learn from, you know, from each other. Well, I think what we should do, we need first of all to focus on the family, okay? The family has a role to play when it comes to making sure that the children are exposed to facing challenging, okay? We have, you know, I'm afraid that, you know, we might have a generation that is not able to cope with all these challenges, you know, they're going to face in life. Okay, whether jobs, education, lifestyle, you know, we're living in a globalization, you know, impact, you know, life, whether we like it or not. So this is why parents, you know, this is why we have to start, you know, at home first. Parents have to understand that they have a role to play. they need to teach their kids how to cope with these challenges. Talking to them about different challenges from, so that, children will feel that they have sources to go to whenever they have a challenge. If something, happens at school, they will go back to and talk about it. We need to talk about, like, for example, those who are living in the countryside, for example. They need to educate their kids that, maybe you have a small possibility of moving from the countryside to the city.
Yes.
Whether they move or not, this is another issue. But we need to be prepared. Maybe they will not move now within this time. Okay, maybe they will move in the future.
Yeah.
So they need to be prepared. School has to play a role too. There should be a course, taught in the schools where we are exposed to the idea of challenges in life. Economic challenges, social challenges, cognitive challenges, name it, all types of challenges should be discussed in the school. And instead of just relying on this, traditional system where students have to memorize information and, pass a test, there should be a class or a course that emphasizes the idea of facing challenges. Otherwise, we'll have a generation that will not be a weak generation, cannot cope with the challenges here in Oman, and then, even when they go outside Oman, they can be easily affected negatively. So we need to have a strong generation coping with the challenges of life in general.
Okay, one last thing that I wanted to mention is that living in the cities, it gives you the advantage of getting to know different nationalities, different cultures, people coming from around the world living in the city, and you get that exposure that you might not have in the countryside. And this also helps you to understand the other and respect other people and respect their cultures, their religion, their faith. I don't know how it works in the countryside, but maybe now things are changing.
Yes.
And the countryside, they are becoming cities as well.
Yes.
And you have a mixture of people living there as well. So maybe...
the exposure is less for sure. But since you talked about this, let me conclude with this. Why we can cope, with other nationalities and cultures.
Yeah.
But we cannot cope with people who are coming from the same country. Like, for example, people would say, I have to be open-minded to different cultures, people are coming from outside. So why cannot you cope also with people who are coming from the countryside? Why don't you show them that respect that you're trying to show to other people?
That's a valid...
So, if you have the ability to do that, you should be able to do this also, among... Internally. Why we have to do it, just, at the international level, forgetting, that we have to do this also locally.
Ahmed bin Mubarak al-Muta'ani, thank you very much. I had an enjoyable time, and I really learned from this session. I always wanted to do a show something like this,
Yeah,
so
thank you.
and I hope our audience have also enjoyed today's show. I hope to have many more shows with you, Ahmed, in the future. So you're trapped here with me. You can't do anything.
Thank you so much for hosting me.
Thank you very much. Dear listeners, I'm your host, Hatim Al-Absalam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
It's indescribable, knowing that this is our